He was 6 years old and she was 5. And he made so much trouble to her, but in a sense, he really did actually like her. And she would make trouble back. She liked him, but she really wouldn't say. He, during the month of February, he saved up all his allowances, all his little coins. And when February 14 came along, he bought her a red rose. You know, it was her favorite flower. And so he gave it to her and he said, I know I make trouble to you a lot, but it's because I really like you. Will you be my Valentine? And she was speechless. 5 years old, she didn't really know what to say. But she took the flower and she said, yes, I'll be your Valentine. And so they became childhood sweethearts. In elementary, they grew up. They were together all through middle school, all through high school, and they actually got married 2 years after graduation. And so he joined the army, and she became a nurse. And he bought her a big house. It was light green with white trimmings and a white picket fence, and there was a really big yard. And in the yard there was a tall tree, and he built her a little swing. And on cool summer evenings he would push her on the swing, and she would laugh just like how they used to when they were kids. He even planted bushes of her favorite flowers, the red rose, right in front of the porch. And on his way home, he would pick one if they were blossom and give them to her. And then World War II hit. The United States government has bases in the Philippines, and they controlled the area. And so he had to go. He had no choice. It was his duty to serve his country, and he knew that he needed to go there and protect the bases. And she didn't want him to go, but she as well also knew that it was his duty. And so there at the train station, they left. He left. He was only going to be gone for 3 months. He stood there with her, along with the other soldiers and their wives and girlfriends. And he didn't want to go. In the distance, not too far, he saw this older woman, and she was carrying bouquets of roses just for soldiers to give their girlfriends or wives before they left. And so he went over there and he picked one out. He picked out the red rose and he paid the woman, and he came back to his wife and he gave it to her, and he assured her he would only be gone for 3 months. And he said that he would be back on February 14th, on the day that they got married. So she accepted the red rose and she hugged him, and she didn't want to let him go. And she gave him her picture so that he could look at it when he was away and remember her. And so the train master called. He said, "All aboard!" And he looked at her one more time, and he hugged her deeply. Promised her that he would be back in 3 months, and that she would be waiting for him at the train station on that day. And so he grabbed hold of the rail, stepped aboard, and he looked at her. And she just stood there watching him until they couldn't see each other's faces anymore. So they wrote to each other. It wasn't as bad as these scenes. His letters were dirty. She knew that he was out in the field. And he would tell her about how things were in his area of the world. But he didn't tell her what war was like. He really wanted to protect her from that. And she wrote back as often as she could as well. But she didn't tell him that she was pregnant. She didn't want him to worry anymore. She just wanted him to focus on coming home. And so weeks turned into months, and it wasn't until 2 weeks before the day he was supposed to come back that his letters stopped coming. But she knew that he was still alive. She felt it. She felt it that he was still alive. And she went there on February 14th to the train station, and all soldiers were coming home, but her soldier didn't. And so for 2 months after that, she still went to the train station every day, hoping that he would return, and he didn't. He still didn't come home. The military gave her a medal in his honor because he was seen missing in action. She accepted the medal, but in the end, she still felt that he was alive. And so she had the medal on a picture of him at home. She gave birth to a boy, and she raised the boy by herself. As he grew up, he became a reporter, and he knew his mother's tradition of going to the train station every February 14th. It was just her little tradition. By then, she was an old woman, and everyone there at the train station knew her, knew that she went there every February 14th, and just waited for her loved one. She just liked being there, watching lovers reunite, something that she didn't have. But her son got sick of it. He felt that his mom really needed to move on, and she told him that she was okay, but he really didn't believe her. So with her not knowing, he took a trip to the Philippines to find out what happened to his father. He did some research, he talked to people, and he came across this one village, and they said there is this old man that fought in that war. He's over there, I think he's in that house. You should probably talk to him. So he went there, and the old man was sitting on the side of his house, and he looked at him. He saw this young man coming to approach him, and his voice, in his voice you could hear it, and in his face you could see that it was like he saw a ghost. So the son walked up to him and said, "Hi," and the old man, looked at him and said, "I know who you are. I know your father. He and I were best friends, and he saved my life. I knew you were coming." And the young man was really shocked, and he said, "You don't even know who I am or why I'm here." And he said, "You look exactly like your father. Come with me. Here's the grave that I buried your father myself. And look on the cross, and you'll see that you must have the same last name as him." So they walked, and sure enough, he came to a grave, and on the cross, they did carry the same last name. The man went away, and he came back, and he had his father's belongings, and it was a jacket, a military jacket with his last name on it. And there was a book also, and in the book, he noticed that it was a journal that his father had kept the whole time he was gone. So the old man told him, "I promised your father that his body would return to your mom, and that his belongings would go back with her as well. I hope you'll help me fulfill that promise." And he said yes. So the young man made arrangements for his father's body to be buried back in the United States along with his mom. The military, they ended up examining the body, did an autopsy, and they did come to the conclusion that this was their missing soldier. And so they made preparations for the body to come back to his wife. It was in a black casket. And before his father died, he had written instructions on how he wanted to come back. And he wanted to come back on February 14th, on the day that he promised him. So that day came, February 14th, and she was an old woman, and the son brought her to the train station. And unlike most visits there, this time was different. There was a lot of people. There was newscasters and photographers, people in her community that knew her story. And so she sat there, she waited. At the train station, the train came, and people got silent, and they pulled out the casket. The casket came down the hall, and on both sides there were soldiers in uniform, and they were there to welcome their fallen soldier. So the casket pulled up to her, and according to his instructions, there was sitting on the casket was his journal, and on top of the journal was a red rose, and it was the last one that he could ever give her. So she walked up, an old woman as she was. She picked up the red rose, and she smelled it, and she knew her soldier had finally came home. And she also knew that he was in heaven looking down on her. She saw the journal, and she opened it, and there it was with a picture of her, the same one that she had given to him on the day that he died. It was worn and torn, but he kept it. She turned the next page over, and it said, "Hello, sweetheart."